All right, we are live. Welcome to yet another call, another weekly call for the working group for the Merge Request Report Widgets. And Savash, you have the first point. Oh, sorry, just before you go, checklists, they're all the same as last week. We have the widgets enabled in production, their default, the documentation has been reviewed and complete, and we're ready for the wrap up for the working group. So nothing changed. Savash.
Yeah, thanks. So the idea of walking through the code is because we need, so I submitted the EMR, well, the core logic, at least the skeleton for the refactoring of the EMR widget. Fernando reviewed it, and so we asked for feedback to the team, and so far we received a little feedback. Therefore, the idea was to walk through the changes, show them here, and then if anyone at least watches the video afterwards, they can see what has been done so far. So I'm going to go ahead and quickly share my screen. Yeah, so this is the MR. The link is in the agenda. Fernando reviewed it. So if everything looks good, I think we can, afterwards, we can move forward to the maintainer review and then get this merged. So what I did is, so I created here, well, first of all, let me tell you that if you check the MR, I have left plenty of comments to describe the steps and the thinking behind this. But basically, just going to do something. I'm not going to go through the changes here because it may be complicated. So I'm just going to go here and walk through the code to show how it works. So we have so we have two widget apps. This is basically where we register our applications. So one is for the CE version, the other one is for the EE version. And the CE version, as of now, it's empty because I'm developing the EE version of the security reports. And here there is a computed property. It returns an array. It's basically it's the name of the components that are going to be mounted, and then the widget component takes care of it. Widget app, this one. It basically goes through the array and then it renders them. Each MR widget. So each widget looks like this. This is the security reports. So we have here two methods that the version 1 consumers should be familiar with, fetch expanded data and then fetch collapsed data. And then we pass that to the MR widget component as a handler, and then we pass the data as a view model, so that the MR widget, it handles fetching the data, displaying the errors. So we just pass the error text and then the loading text, and then that logic is handled within the container. And afterwards, since this is a view model, it's basically it emits an event, and then once the data is fetched, we have the updated version of the data. So it's basically a collapsed and expanded. So if you check here, it's just collapsed and extended. Typo here, expanded data. As for the rest, so I think one thing that is worth mentioning is that this supports slots. So for instance, the summary text here, I can provide a summary slot, and then I can do whatever I need to do. Same goes for the content, but for the other widgets, which are using the extension API, they can also pass the object, or like the content, for instance, like this, and skip the slot, so they can provide the JavaScript object that we do provide today with the version 1. And in the future MRs, it's going to be handled. So there shouldn't be too much refactoring for those widgets. So basically, this is the idea, and then the rest is just tiny details. I'm not going to go through them, but this is how I consume the MR widget. This is how it's going to look like. So if you have any feedback, the MR link is in the agenda. So please provide your feedback over there. Otherwise, I think Fernando, we can move forward with
Sure. I was just going to add that I guess this is partly a question, but is the intent here also over time to build up, for example, a set of view components that can be used in each of these slots? So for example, like child components that are conformant to the design spec, so we don't re-implement the wheel every time, but we have a core set of components that we can do. And if for some reason we kind of need an escape hatch, we can insert whatever we want into the slot. And then we would conform that one off by, in the code reviews, making sure it kind of conforms to the spec.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very good point. We had a recent chat with Jeremy, and so the idea is that for common things, like for instance, there is a banner that can be reused. So that's going to go here in the widget. We can have components section, and then we can use that one. So it's going to be banner.view, and then we can reuse that. So it's already going to have the design skeleton. And when we had the chat with Jeremy, so there is a GitLab UI component that's going to come up in the future, which is going to be like the widget. And the widget is going to consume that GitLab UI component, which is obviously which also it's going to have its own components. So yes, in short, the answer is yes. We are going to reuse components here. So for common things, if something is too specific to the widget, then the developer can put that in the widget's own folder.
No, that's awesome. And thanks for so much for leading these efforts. I think after the V1 rolled out, it gave us the time to use it and kind of see the pros and cons. And I think this solution will kind of mitigate a lot of those problems we had. Is there I don't know, is there a plan across groups to migrate over to version 2, or is it? Because the way I looked at it, this working group and initiatives were twofold, right? Number one was design consistency. I think we've achieved that primary goal, right? But now we have the secondary problem of having 2 implementations. So, I think we could take our time with the technical migration. Technically, they should look the same. But from the design perspective, I think we've achieved our goal or we're close to wrapping up and achieving that goal of consistency. So, like, I don't know, Andre, how you want to approach this, but
sure. I agree. I think we should only have one implementation. When this proposal from Savas came forward, we had that discussion, and I totally see that the security widget is the first one to fully use that update. But the idea is to then migrate all the other ones. From what I understood, it wouldn't be a heavy lifting to move each individual widgets. Now, and then we can discuss whether we can leave that up to the DRIs to be scheduled, or I don't know if Savage, you have some capacity to rewrite them since you have the knowledge. But for the first time, I would be okay in accepting the existence of 2 implementations of the template rendering for the time being. But yeah, ideally, we would be unifying that and deprecating the first version. So the methods would be going away, and we'd be all having the widgets in the version 2, and then the documentation would be updated and everything. So now who will take up on that task of rewriting the V2, the all widgets to V2? That's still up to be discussed, I guess. I'm guessing the priority is to get the V2 out the door so that we can ship the secure widget. But after that, it's kind of like up to be decided, I guess, from that perspective. And I'm stepping back a little bit. I think it's important we are wrapping up the working group because the goals have been achieved, the exit criteria have been achieved, but we won't be going away. Like code review will still be around. We'll still be available to answer requests and everything like that. But then the DRIs also have the responsibility to maintain their code base of the widgets. This is just another issue. I just don't expect it to be like a full on, because from what I understood, the methods or the mechanics they have for the methods today are easily portable to the V2 once it's shipped. So
the mechanics, yeah, I think the mechanics are, but not all the child components exist for rendering the complete spec, which I does that sound accurate?
Can I jump in here?
Sure.
So yeah, so as of now, what you have reviewed, it doesn't have that functionality, but so probably I missed it mentioning that. But so what I have in mind is building this V2 backwards compatible. So when you pass the extension API configuration that we passed today, we're gonna have a component in the widget which renders that data. So it should just be moving the register extension part from the MR widget options to the and then create the same component using the MR widget component and pass the same data. So it should, in theory, there shouldn't be any need for refactoring the logic, because we're gonna support the extension version 1, the extension API version 1 anyways.
Okay. Thanks for that detail. So it sounds like we'd be able to essentially use
just pass the props. Yeah, exactly. Just pass down the props, and it should handle the version 1 as well, because that's also required also for right now there is an ongoing work for the generic report. So the backend should be able to display a generic report which doesn't match any of the existing widgets today. And the data is going to be dynamic, and they're using the extension API for that, which we recently built. So we need to support that anyways.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Cool. So I can move on to my second point then. Thank you so much for that update, Savash. Very, very cool to see this moving forward. I would recommend getting some feedback if you want to have Phil's opinion or Phil's review of it. I would
that's the plan. Like after Fernando reviews it, Phil, we're gonna ask Phil for
great solid reviews on the 2 rounds.
Yeah.
Sweet. Heads up, he will be out of office next week, so plan for that at least. So that's that. Right, my next point regarding the topic of closing the working group, because we've established that all these efforts can live outside of the context of the working group, given that the exit criteria has been satisfied. I have been looking into it. The version that has the new widgets on by default has been delivered to customers. No major critical issues have been reported, or at least that we heard of. So the goal that we had set would be to close it this week on the August 4th call. But in doing some preparation for this call, I realized that our executive sponsor is taking his very well-earned PTO. So with that, I think we'll put that on hold until Tim's back, Tim Zalman. When he's back, I'm going to brief him on the updates we've done and kind of like check with him whether he's supportive of closing down the working group. And then if so, we'll start the procedures to close down the working group. So I do expect to do that next week. I think I checked. I think he will be back on the 5th, after the 5th. So after tomorrow. So next week early on, I'll do my diligences and start to get that conversation going, so that by Thursday we can provide an update to the rest of the group, whether we're closing down right away or if there's anything else that he would like us to take care of. Any questions? Cool. So Fernando, you have the last point before the...
Yeah, so license compliance was one of those secure stage widgets that wasn't that had its own separate feature flags. It didn't roll out with the global one, and that was intentional. We just needed more time. We're missing out some backend stuff, which has been completed. So I'm wrapping up my testing, but the plan was to enable on .com probably later today. It's already been enabled on .com for the test project, but rolling it out globally, and it should go into self-managed this milestone. That is one of the, besides the security widget, I think license compliance is the only other security one. Secure stage one. I forget the one that Yannick was working on. I don't know if code quality was under secure, but that was the only call out I had.
That's great. Great news.
Yeah.
I don't know which one that is either. I know that Yannick is a DRI for code quality, and that's basically it, I think. So
that I only call it out because I think that was the only other widget I knew of that had a individual feature flag. So I don't know the state of that. I could check. I'll ping you in Slack. I'll check what it is, the status on production.
But okay, great news though. Moving forward then. Any other comments there? Can we move on? Okay, so that concludes our public part of the meeting. I'll stop the recording here if I can. Yes, I can. I'll stop the live stream here, and we'll carry on the discussion in private because it's a confidential